So, I need something to talk about, and there's not exactly a ton tickling my fancy right now. Perhaps that AMC A-list membership wasn't quite as thought out as I believed it was. Oh well, at least the Hunger Games prequel comes out soon, and that looks pretty gas. But on the subject of things that are released after a massive amount of time between them and the previous installment, there's Attack on Titan. Yes, that is correct. I'm coming out as a weeb. Arguably one of the most popular animes to come out ever, the series finally came to its conclusion this month. Part 2 of the 3rd chapter of the 4th season of The Dime Bag finally dropped. For now, it's subtitles only, but I imagine if subtitles versus dubs were enough of a barrier to entry for you, you probably don't really care that much about spoilers anyway. So either you watched it, or I can spoil it for you without feeling bad, because if you didn't watch it, why are you here anyway? I feel like Attack on Titan's ending presents such a unique opportunity for a discussion of art, and the arts of television and film specifically. The manga concluded before the anime, and with that conclusion, the manga's creator, Hajime Isayama, apologies if I mispronounced that, had some time to reflect before his works reached their endpoint for a second time. With this ability to take a second pass, and the reaction of original readers fully available to him, some slight changes were made. I find this very interesting because it is extremely rare that a creator of such popular media gets a chance at any sort of revisions. The only other example I could even think of off the top of my head is George Lucas and his insane revisions to the various Star Wars films over the years. And those are not quite worthy of conversation, for lack of a better way of saying it. A few points that maybe weren't so apparent in the manga are clarified and crystallized to become more solid and anchoring points in the series' messaging. To name a few of these, there's Mikasa's clear murder of Eren that was maybe not seen as such in the manga, as well as Armin being more condemning to Eren during their final conversation regarding how Eren's plan and the rumbling came to pass. In the manga, neither of these were as clearly hammered home as they were in the anime, but with a second chance, Isayama adjusts to create what is hopefully a conclusion more in line with the message he had intended to deliver and the sort of story he had hoped to tell. And in my opinion, this is great. In this sort of situation, I think I am fully supportive of the intent and would argue against the concept of death of the author. However, even with these revisions, the ending was still received somewhat controversially. And I think for me, the reason is pretty clear. I can absolutely appreciate the messaging and the theme and the ideas that ring throughout Attack on Titan as a series more prominently than the bells of its intense musical score. War is ugly, the people who fight it often uglier, and almost nothing is ever black and white. Everything in our world is more complicated than we'd like it to be, and because of this, any sort of resolution we find for our troubles is likely impermanent. Conflict festers and boils and eventually bursts to the surface again, only for the cycle of violence to continue again and again and again. Because at the end of the day, we humans are not wholly good, and it's in our nature to be vile creatures, whether we like to admit it or not. And as hollow as this closing message can leave a viewer or a reader feeling, it is a perfectly valid theme to hammer home. Not only because it is observably true in our reality, especially in this present day, but because Isayama offers short bits of reprieve. Optimism and hope are sprinkled in throughout his grim, intentionally unsatisfying finale. Our surviving heroes work to rebuild the ravaged world around them. They continue their mission for peace in the world by dedicating themselves to de-escalation. The heroes do end up winning, and not only do they stand against impossible odds, they manage to rally others to join them. Those who you might think would be their most titanic, imposing opponents turn out to be their keys to victory. Without Armin being able to inspire the Titans who came before, the day is definitively lost. And of all the people to oppose the rumbling, they should be the least likely to do it. They are, for better or worse, the icons of Eldian power. Most of them should have vested interest in seeing their people live free. They, in theory, should be supportive of their own people's rebellion and squashing of their oppressors. That would be in line with the show, no? With its theme of violence and retaliation? No, it kind of wouldn't. Because in spite of this bleak ending and the images of war we get ravaging the world for centuries on end after the series comes to a close and the credits roll, there's much more than that to be seen and experienced. There's hope, there's purpose, there's resistance in the face of impossible, insurmountable odds. Because yes, humans are messy and evil and violent and terrible, but humans are also kind and good and loving and compassionate. When they can help, they almost always will. And I feel as if this half of Isayama's message flies under the radar, both in his own mind and in the perception of the audience for the finale. A friend of mine pinned down the main cause of this best, I think. When we were discussing it, he said, "I wish they weren't so accepting of Eren's plan needing to play out the way that it did." And frankly, he's right. The entire series has been about trying to find another way, about trying to uncover a method of climbing an impossibly tall obstacle that is so far unforeseen. Yet, when Armin and Eren talk in the end, Armin simply allows Eren's beliefs of his way being the only perceivable path forward to stand. Now, I've not done this in my reviews nearly since I started this channel, but I believe there is a brief scene that could be added to this finale, and specifically to this conversation between Armin and Eren in Armin's memory, that would add so much depth to this series closer. It would add that much-needed yin to the yang of the series' themes, as well as further emotional resonance with Armin and with Eren, our resident genocidal maniac. What if this was not the only way that Eren tried to achieve freedom? What if his power functioned less like the apathetic Dr. Manhattan's perception of reality and time, but maybe more akin to Doctor Strange's Eye of Agamotto in Infinity War? Maybe Eren tried exploring different possibilities. Maybe he told Armin about these possibilities, about these countless, seemingly endless and infinite attempts at finding another way to save his friends and his home, to end the scourge of the Titans on humanity. But no matter what he would try to do, or who he would try to convince, or whatever sort of peace he managed to bring about, it never really worked. Eren experienced countless futures, lived countless lives, trying to bring about the freedom he always wanted without this cataclysmic destruction, but it never came to pass. There was always human fear. There was always hatred of the other. There was always our imperfect nature that rose up like a black wave and crashed down on even his best efforts. He never got there, at least not without the rumbling. Of course, Armin wouldn't believe him at first. He'd say he didn't try enough times, or that he didn't address the root cause of this hatred or this fear or this division in the world. There would be a way to address this consistent violence and hatred that spewed out towards the Eldians and then circled its way back towards everyone else. And it would be then that Eren tells Armin that the hatred isn't consistent. It is a constant in their world, but it is by no means consistent. Always it would stem from somewhere new. No matter what Eren did, no matter what sorts of actions he took to convince one person or one country or even an entire continent, the hate would survive. It would fester like a plague, growing more and more potent and powerful and more deadly until eventually, always, it would explode into a fury of violence that exterminated the Eldians and laid waste to parody. It would always stem from a different source, a different human. And every time Eren would have to watch his friends die in a new and freshly brutal way. And here, Eren would finally expect Armin to understand, to see why he had to do what he did in carrying out the rumbling to achieve his final goal. But Armin wouldn't. Even then, he'd deny Eren. He'd be Eren's foil, his thematic opposite. Where Eren and his actions represent the violent darkness of humanity, Armin and his steadfast conviction to oppose this violence symbolize our better nature. And it wouldn't just be Armin. As everyone's memories came back to them and they learned the same details Eren shared with Armin, they all stand in opposition to his supposed inevitable conclusion. Because as much as this story has been about the tragedies humans force upon other humans, it has also been about human resilience, resistance, and hope. About humanity's ability to fight back even against the worst, most insurmountable odds. And I think that being driven home in the ending and given a bit more emphasis could have given this ending what so many viewers and readers alike felt was missing. As important as the themes of inevitable tragedy and cyclical violence are, part of what makes Attack on Titan so compelling and so amazing to so many people is how the characters respond to these constant defeats and devastations. So many of them have died, so many friends and family have been lost, but every member of the Scout Regiment keeps going. Because they're human, and they have hope that what they fight for will be a world worth living in and experiencing. Humans are violent and cruel, yes, but they're also relentless and full of hope. That's what I would have to say about the finale, and what I wish we just got a tiny bit more of. It's impossible for me to truly recollect on every bit of Attack on Titan over the years in a single review, but I would say this is a series that has consistently given me very many high points with very, very few lows. It's cohesive, and it's compelling, and it's just fun to watch. It's a great show that will be remembered fondly, and I would happily give it 4 stars out of 5. I would absolutely recommend checking it out, even if you are afraid of being called a weeb or don't necessarily like anime. This is a great starting point, not only a great anime, but just a great show. Until next time.